Welcome back, Guardian. Those of you who have been a part of my channel for many years, even before I was really even doing a channel, thank you. And second of all, you know that my background is in speed killing, and to do speed killing in Destiny, you have to be a real competitive person, and that involves knowing data. You have to know everything about your build that gives you a 1-up versus a competitor, their speed kill times, and their speed kill numbers. And that's what we're going to talk about today with Intellect. I made a mobility video the other day, and then some people were talking about, well, it's not better than building out for Intellect, and that's what we're going to talk about specifically today, is why if you're building past a tier 3, which is what I recommend, how you're wasting potential space on your build that could contribute to things that actually will help you in speed killing, if speed killing is your thing. If you want to become beast and slay fast, you have to have a build that gives you every bit of an edge over somebody else that will make you a faster killer than they are. And that's what we're going to go over right now. Starting at tier 1 Intellect, we're going to start at this lost sector. It's going to be a controlled environment. I'm going to kill every ad. I'm going to pick up every masterwork orb. Every test that I do will be controlled and exactly the same, no matter what tier that I'm on. And then after that, we're going to do tier 3 versus tier 10 in a Nightfall to show you why having the tier 10 doesn't give you any more advantage than the tier 3, and why tier 3 is the perfect amount of intellect to have. So I don't have any super recharge perks on any of these builds. I'm just straight up using Telesto, killing the same amount of ads, the same strategy, and everything basically in all these tests to show you where the super meter is by the time I kill every ad and pick up every masterwork orb. And then we're going to test it against a 10 and then a 3. So I'm going to fast forward all this. We're about to kill the last ad, pick up the last masterwork orb, and this is where the supercharge meter is going to be. It's going to be right past the middle of the Telesto. We're going to come back to this screenshot. We're going to do the same test now, except we're going to be at a tier 10 Intellect. So let's do the same thing. We're not going to have any super recharge perks. I'm going to show you a rundown of the build just so you can kind of see what I'm using. Even though I do have on Doomfangs, I'm not going to use the melee to proc the Doomfang. I'm just using it specifically because it has high intellect, and I needed to reach a tier 10, and I actually had to buy that rare piece out of the vault right there to hit the tier 10 as well, and having all those mods on. And having a tier 10 wasted so much of my stat potential because I had to sacrifice other things just to hit the tier 10, and it's another reason that I really don't recommend it because it really doesn't help you at all, and I'm having to sacrifice recovery, mobility, and my ability recharge rates on top of that. So here we're going to do the same test. I'm going to pick up the same amount of masterwork orbs. Everything flows the exact same because it's a controlled environment. All the ads spawn the same every time. You'll see all those masterwork orbs that I'm picking up. And at the very end, this is where my super meter is going to be. It's going to be right at the elemental part of the Telesto. And then here is the tier 1 where it's still in the middle. So you can see that huge bump that we got on tier 10 versus the tier 1. Now what we're going to do is go to a tier 3 Intellect, the one that I recommend and the one that I use on all my builds. The cool thing about tier 3 Intellect is it's not that hard to hit. Usually when you balance out all your other abilities such as your mobility, your recovery, and your discipline, things like that, when you masterwork all your armor, it usually sets you off at a tier 3 Intellect. We're going to do the same controlled environment, same lost sector, and then after this test, we're going to go to a Nightfall, doing a tier 3 versus a tier 10 to see what the difference is again, to make sure that it's always timing out the exact same, which I already know that it does basically, to go ahead and give you the spoiler on it. I've run this a ton of times because Intellect was something that I wanted to see if it worked when Shadowkeep launched, and if it was something I needed to worry about building for, or if it ever gave me like a boost per kill, whether I was doing it. But what your Intellect basically does is when you're not killing things, the standalone time is where your Intellect kind of pays off. I really recommend it for PvP more than PvE, but you'll see once we pick up that last masterwork orb, you can see that the supercharge meter is actually exactly the same spot that it was whenever I had the tier 10. So tier 10 and tier 3, exactly the same. Now if I was to stop slaying and let that meter go ahead and build its way all the way back up, it would be faster at 10, but when you're slaying, it catches right back up, and then there's the tier 1, then here's the tier 10 again, and then going back to the tier 3. So you can see it's exactly the same. Now what we're going to do is go to a Nightfall, do the exact same thing from start all the way to the point of where our super meter is charged up. We're going to be using the Festering Core Nightfall for the example. It's going to be locked loadout, so I'm just going to have the same thing on. I'm going to do the same style of combat, slay at the same style of speed. I'm just going to speed clear all the way to the point to where my super is first there. And we're also going to use the timer that's on the Nightfall at the bottom right to see exactly where it times out at on each tier. So starting off, we're going to use the tier 10, and like I said, I'm just going to fast forward right here so you can save yourself the time of having to watch me slay all the way up to the point my super is there. It's at a ×3 here, so you can just kind of get the idea. Basically, I'm picking up every Masterwork Orb on top of that. So every time I make one, I'm going to slay and pick it back up and keep slaying and trying to make as many Masterwork Orbs as I can at the same time. The reason that I recommend Intellect in PvP is because there's a lot more time in between kills than there is between PvE kills. You'll notice I'm slaying like every few seconds. Basically, there's an ad thrown in my face, and I always pick up those Masterwork Orbs so I can do that naturally, as I naturally would in combat. If there's an orb, I'm going to pick it up exactly as I would as if I was actually speed killing. And now we're entering this area, and we're about to have our super charged. I'm going to zoom in at the bottom of the Nightfall timer, and you can see that at 2 minutes and 17 seconds, that was when we got our first super in this Nightfall. So now that we know that, we're going to go to a tier 3, we're going to relaunch the Nightfall, and see exactly when our super comes back, doing the same style of combat, same amount of slaying, speed killing all the way up to the point till the super meter is charged. This isn't the only Nightfall that I've tested this against. Whenever I did my supercharged perks video a while back, I did a ton of Nightfalls, I did a lot of Menagerie, just to see where the average super would time out at, basically. And it's doing the same thing as it was back during those tests, so any updates that have happened between now and then is exactly the same. However, Light Reactor does stack now, but the leg perks no longer stack. So if you're using any kind of 1.0 leg perk such as Enhanced Bomber, and you try to use any kind of like leg perk on your new 2.0 class item, it cancels out the leg perk altogether. So you can't use Enhanced Bomber on your legs and then Distribution on your 2.0 class items. It'll completely cancel out the leg perk and only use what's on your class item. But anyways, back to the Intellect. So I'm slaying exactly as I did just a second ago. I'm picking up every Masterwork Orb as I did a second ago. However, I did change up one thing here. I used the rocket against the Hydra just to down his health a little bit, and then I swept the Telesto floor, but it's actually the same thing. It doesn't really like make the meter go up any faster or slower, basically. It's just the variations that sometimes combat can have in it, but essentially it's the exact same combat flow, the same combat speed. I'm reaching this area the exact same time as I did last time, and you can see that the super meter is almost charged. And if you look at the bottom right at that Nightfall timer, we're almost at 2 minutes and 17 seconds on a tier 3 versus the tier 10. And you can see that our super actually comes back at the exact same time, showing you that tier 3 really is the sweet spot. The faster you kill, the faster your super comes back, and it doesn't matter where your intellect is at, unless you're in a stationary environment where there's not a lot of combat going on. That's why I don't recommend using Intellect, because if you do go past the tier 3, you're actually getting no benefit. There's actually one spot in this game where I found that Intellect can actually pay off, and it was actually not even Intellect at the time the game was, you know, having Intellect or whatever. It was actually back when super mods could make a difference, which is basically Intellect now, but it was the Shattered Throne final boss when Forsaken first launched. Because at that time I was at low light, it actually saved me a little bit of time whenever I was waiting to charge my super at the final encounter in the Shattered Throne. But nowadays, I haven't found one situation where I'm like, thank God my Intellect was there, because slaying has just gotten more and more as DLCs have passed on. The more intellect you have, the less it helps you, because you're slaying a lot faster nowadays. There's much more ads, such as the Menagerie, and in Shadowkeep, and in the Chamber of Suffering, as you see back here. I'm not getting any benefit whether I would have tier 10 or a tier 3 on, but it does benefit you to have supercharged perks, such as Light Reactor, or stacking Light Reactor. But if you're wasting any kind of space on your build for your intellect and PvE, you might as well put that towards mobility, towards your recharge rates, and towards your recovery, because those are data proven to actually help you in combat. I can't speak on behalf of PC because I don't play on PC, and I know that speed and movement is just a lot more faster because of, one, the frame rate is a lot more, fluent, and you can just see a lot more around you, so it's not as crucial to have it as it is on console, because at the 30 frames per second, you can't really see everything that's going on around you at all times. You have to really, really pay attention because it's not as crystal clear by having a lot smoother frame rate and things like that. That's another reason that I like mobility, because I can get out of the way of enemies a lot quicker. I can take less shots by being just more responsive on my controller. And there's hundreds of situations where I could just live stream and be like, mobility did that, mobility did this, it just happens all the time. Such as this being able to jump higher and shoot a fusion rifle before you hit the top of a wall as you're falling down, or if you're trying to throw a rocket on a ledge where some ads are sitting down as you're falling down. I notice spots like that in Gambit all the time, or when I used to go to low mobility, whenever I'd first start building out a Guardian using like my Reckoning gear, trying to build out the Prime gear, I was at low mobility, and there were so many strategies that I could no longer hit anymore. And then as soon as I got my mobility back, I was so much more fluent. My gameplay was a lot smoother and more tighter, and it really does help you. And it's hard to tell people that aren't into speed killing or haven't just gotten that skill set of speed killing yet to really understand everything that I'm talking about when it comes to builds. But believe me, 100%, I can back up anything on my builds that I tell you about and get that enjoyment of the game and open up a new style of combat that these builds will allow you to do, because they can get you in and out of these situations and let you push and wreck just that much harder by having the right balanced build on when it comes to slaying ads and being a fast and effective killer on your fire team, or if you're doing a solo activity. But that's it, Guardian. I appreciate you all for tuning in. Hopefully that video makes a lot of sense to you when it comes to building out your Guardian. Don't waste anything on your build. Know the data behind it. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to Destiny and when it comes to you building out your Guardian. You know to not waste space for other things that aren't really helping you when you could put it towards aspects of your build that actually will benefit you and make your gameplay beast a lot harder. You Guardians, take it easy. If you want to support the channel, teespring.com/Ristopoulos or paypal.me/Ristopoulos, or join our Beast Squad, become a Beast member. I really appreciate all of you who do watch. Thanks for your support. Hope my build videos don't come off too harsh sometimes when it's like, you know data, you want to share the data, you know the facts behind it, and then you tell the people that maybe just don't know the data or maybe heard the wrong information from somebody else, so I sound like a complete jerk. So I don't mean to come off like that. It's just when you know stuff, you know stuff. And I'm just trying to help everybody else become Beast, as I'm trying to become Beast myself. So, you Guardians, take it easy. I'll see you all on the next video, next time.
In space.